Hey guys, welcome back to this video, and today I'm just going to be talking about the importance of master studies. And this is actually one of those paintings that I painted with the help of a painting from Bierstadt, and this is an effort that I've been taking over the past few months for me to try and learn how to paint landscapes properly, as my previous paintings were not really good, and I thought that it's important for me to take some time and learn how to paint master studies. So copies, like I try to copy from the masters, and this is what I call master studies. So as you can see in this painting, I took inspiration from Bierstadt's photo or painting that he did, and the importance of this is mainly to help in practicing the fundamentals. And the fundamentals that I'm talking about in this, for example, that I was practicing in this painting were lighting, composition, and generally the paintings that make up the fundamentals you need to paint a very convincing or good landscape. But in this case, you can see that you will see as the painting progresses that I also didn't paint the textures, for example. Those are also things that I still need to learn, and that's why I see the painting that I made this time falls short of enough texture, but it helped me understand values and light, values, colors, compositions that go into making this painting. So it also painting master studies is also important in helping you to understand how to represent various things within your painting. For example, if I'm painting clouds, I want them to look like clouds, but then I also have to find a way of making mist that doesn't feel like there are clouds spilling over the landscape, if that makes sense. So again, these are things that you can find by copying from the masters and then practicing on your own. So again, this is why I've taken so long without posting a video, because I've been doing some of these studies and I decided to post this one. I'll hopefully post others as well as when I'm trying to get better. But again, I'll be discussing some of the things that I found useful in this painting session that I had. But generally, as you can see, when I start the painting, for example, I try to begin with making line art. It's much easier for me, most especially when you're working digitally. It's very easy. Line art is very important for one reason. It also helps you to study composition and how to come up with a very good composition. And during the line art phase, one hack I can give you guys is, if you find that you're painting on a terrible laptop like I do, like my laptop when I'm painting this video was painting this landscape, my RAM, for example, is 4 GB, and once you combine recording and painting in Photoshop at the same time, you'll notice that you'll have these kind of problems like lagging software, and because of the brushes, some brushes are heavy and stuff. So what I do, the hack that I can give you guys is, when you're painting the initial stages of the line art, try to reduce your resolution. So for example, when I was painting this, I started with a 72 dpi, and then once I finished painting the line art, it because in the line art phase you don't need to zoom in that much. Most of the time you're zoomed out, so you just paint on a 72 dpi, and then once you're going to add in the color stage, once you're done, then you go back to the canvas size and then bump up that resolution to say 100, and then put in the base colors. All right, and then as you progress, so you progress slowly by slowly. So when you're beginning to add in details, like at this stage where I'm putting in the animals, then you can try to bump up the resolution higher, up to 200, or yeah, maybe let's say 200, and then paint in the far animals. But again, when you're painting things like texture, for example, again you'll have to bump up the resolution higher, maybe to 300 or higher than 300, so that you can paint in the little details. This is if your computer is not very good like mine was. But the challenge you're going to have with this is, once you scale up the resolution, you have to go back and fix up some of those things, like when you find that when you increase the resolution, the previous work will become you'll be scaling up the canvas, so most of it will become blurry, right? So, or pixelated kind of. So you have to kind of go back in and tie up those the parts that you feel need to be the parts that you feel need to be in focus, kind of, right? Speaking of things to be in focus, when I'm painting these scenes as well, there are things that I try to make sure that some are in focus and others are not in focus. This you can achieve by using a couple of techniques. For example, using brushes. You can try to use soft brushes versus hard brushes. For example, in the background where the mountains are, I'm mostly using things like the chalk brushes, or the smooth brush, the round smooth brush for sure. But I don't use the hard brushes in the background, because most of those things are not supposed to be in too much focus. That's one of the things that I noticed that I did in my other paintings. I used to make everything move almost how I used to paint with the same brushes and the same brush intensity for the background elements, as well as those of the foreground, and this makes the painting look kind of flat, or not so without a lot of depth in it. But if you paint like if you use mostly soft brushes in the background, and then you use hard brushes, mostly hard brushes in the foreground, that will create some illusion of depth. I don't know, but I feel like, at least in this painting, that's what I realized, that it can help. And so when you're painting, try to also keep in mind that you have some of your areas are going to be in focus, as I've already said, and those are the things. That's one of the techniques. You can use a couple of brushes, the soft brushes versus hard brushes. For things you want to be in focus, try to use hard brushes, and those that you don't want to be so much in focus, try to use the soft brushes. All right. Another thing you can do is, once you're done with the painting, maybe you can try to use the sharpen element feature in Photoshop, where you sharpen some of the areas that you want to be in focus. I did that in the end for the trees to make sure that those leaves were a little bit in focus, and even the animals, I wanted the animals to be a little bit in focus, but I didn't want the distant mountains to be so much in focus, right? So you can also do that. So this will kind of give your painting a little bit of let me say it will make it a little bit more dynamic and interesting. These are things that I never used to do in my previous paintings, as you can see on some of my Instagram paintings that I have made, but I think it helps. So you can see these the mountains that I wanted to be in focus. I painted them with a hard brush, and those that I didn't want to be in focus, I painted them with a soft or chalk brush. Another thing is, when you're painting water, it's very important that you what I noticed in this is I tried a lot to add reflections. And the way you add reflections is by creating a very contrasty elements within because in my opinion, if for example, if you want to create a reflection of a mountain in the water, you can do something like just flip make a selection and flip the that selection within, like you've seen many people do. But another thing is, if you want to paint some other, like for example here where there was time where I painted a green element, green water, like there, right? So I varied the areas of contrast, meaning I make different values where some values are very low and other values are really high, meaning for example the high key values, those values tending towards white, you make sure you vary them, you make them very small, and whereas the smaller values you make them you make more of the lower values, which means the values that are darker, like values tending towards black, you make those dark and you add a touch of the very light values. That way you can create an illusion of water, if that makes sense. So I've spent a lot of time trying to learn how to paint, and I know that I still have a lot to go. I still need to learn how textures are made. I know how to photo brush. I can do photo brushing, but when I'm studying, I'm trying not to do. I'm trying to cut down all the digital art shortcuts that I find myself in. Maybe here, when you see that the painting is taking shape, the only few things that I'm doing is that I'm using that are an advantage to using digital art. Maybe things like color balance, trying to make sure that your colors are uniform with each other. The greens aren't necessarily green, but they are relative to the colors that are close to them. So those are a few things that I need to keep in mind when I'm painting, and by using color balance, maybe I can try to make sure that things like that are in place. But I'm not trying to photo brush or to get pictures from elsewhere and just put them into my painting, because that will defeat the purpose of the study. Apart from that, I'm going to keep trying to learn I'm still learning how to make textures, and if you guys need any tutorials on some area that you may feel that I can explain more in detail, you can post that in the comment section down below, and I'll make sure that I make a tutorial about that said thing, so that maybe you can find it useful. And apart from that, I'm going to leave it at this. There is a lot of noise as it is already, so I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of the painting, and until next time.